Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Marsha, Head of Partnerships at Kilimanjaro Consulting, and we are thrilled to have you join us today. The spotlight today is on expense management. It is something every business has to deal with, but as organizations grow, it becomes more complex, more manual, and much harder to control. Whether it's chasing receipts, managing approvals across teams, or gaining real visibility over spend, these challenges can quickly slow down finance teams and impact decision making, which is why today's session, Smart Expenses in MYOB, is all about rethinking how expenses are managed using smarter, more automated approaches. We are really excited also because this is the first time we're bringing this topic to life with a customer perspective. You'll hear directly from Serenitas, who is Australia's leading and most experienced land lease operators. Kevin, who is himself a very accomplished finance professional and heads the Serenitas finance function, will share what challenges look like for them and how they've transformed their processes within the business. And alongside them, we are joined by Marianne from ProSpend. ProSpend is a unified spend management platform. It brings together expenses, accounts, payables, cards, budgets, travel, and purchasing into one connected platform, giving businesses a single view of spend. And this is quite apt to today's economic environment where businesses are under pressure to reduce costs and improve operational efficiency. And having that connected visibility is incredibly valuable. A bit about ProSpend before we start, because I am a big fan of our local champions who continue to punch above their weight. ProSpend has been a long-standing partner of Kilimanjaro, and many of you may know it by its original name, Expense Manager. And I love their story, so if I'm repeating it and someone's heard it before, just bear with me. So ProSpend was launched in 2011, and the platform was born from the first-hand experience of its CEO, Sharon Noah. She was running a corporate travel agency at the time, and she saw just how inefficient manual expense reconciliation processes were. Driven by that insight, she developed and launched Australia's first locally built expense management solution. And since then, ProSpend has evolved far beyond its original scope, now offering a comprehensive platform that covers expense management, accounts payable, virtual cards, spend analytics, and much more. Serenitas is currently using ProSpend along with MYOB Acumatica to manage their business expenses. And so whether you're looking to improve your efficiency, tighten governance, or simply make life easier for your teams, today's session should give you a great mix of practical insights and the real world experience. A few things to mention before we dive in. Today's session is being recorded and will be sent to the attendees and the people who have registered. You will all see a Q&A button within your Zoom interface. So please feel free to ask us anything relevant to this topic throughout the session so that others can also see the questions and add to the conversation. We will be reserving time at the end of the session to answer these. So without wasting any more time, please join me in welcoming Kevin and Marianne. Over to you, Maz.
Thank you so much, Masha. How exciting is this? The first live webinar, not pre-recorded, where we've got a wonderful person to join us who's running a business that can share some insights. So good morning, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you all here. I'm Marianne, or everyone calls me Maz, from ProSpend, and today we're doing something a little bit different. Rather than just taking you through a whole lot of slides and a demo, we really want to bring this whole story to life in a real conversation. So I'm really excited to be joined by Kevin from Serenitas, as Masha mentioned, a business that's doing some amazing things in the lifestyle resort space with their time communities. The problem that I have when I went and looked at all these was deciding which one I wanted to retire in, Kevin. I might have to go over to Perth. That one over there is looking pretty good, I'd say. So these communities are just amazing. But I also imagine they bring a lot of challenges, which is what we're going to talk about today. So today is really about exploring their journey, what the challenges looked like before, what prompted them to rethink how they're managing their business spend, and what the process looked like as they searched for a better solution. Like how did they go through that process? How did they navigate that process? Particularly as the business has grown, and what and what's changed along the way. So Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. Really great to have you with us.
Thank you, Maz. Thank you, Marsha. Very excited to be here.
Okay, so before we get started, I'd like to get a little bit of context. So for those who may not be familiar, can you tell us a little bit about Serenitas and the Time Lifestyle Resorts? Maybe the number of locations that you've got, the staff, just to give people a little bit of an indication of the size and what makes you so unique.
Sure. Well, no, again, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here. And obviously, it's always great to share actually experience we've had through. So just in terms of Serenitas, so we're involved in the residential land lease or manufactured home industry space. So we get to blend asset management and residential property development all in one go, where we aim for over 55s. Maz, you're way too young, so I'm not sure why you're even looking at those properties. So the investment thesis is basically we would look at a piece of land that's either DA or non-DA approved for manufactured home estates, where either we'll put in the DA and then we'll put in the civils, and then we actually sell what's called a manufactured home or movable home. It's quite astonishing to actually see the different types of products that you can get, say, from 20 years ago versus today. You have to walk past, it almost looks like a normal home, but technically it's movable, which is great. So we get to collect some profits through the sale of that manufactured home, which generally covers the cost of the civil and the land. And then we get to generate annuity income through a fortnightly ground rent, which we collect from homeowners. So we've got approximately 5,300 occupied sites across the business, with another 2,400 to develop. We started the business in December 2017 with exactly 0 sites and I think 3 employees. And now we've actually grown to over $1 billion in assets, where there's about 155 staff across New South Wales, Vic, Queensland, and of course, beautiful WA, which sometimes people forget.
Yeah. And that was, when I looked it up, that was one of my favourites, I have to say. So, yeah. So that, when you are explaining all that, I can see lots and lots of challenges that would come on board for you and the finance team. I think one of the things is the growth. So as you've grown and expanded those communities so quickly, where did things start to become more challenging from a spend management perspective?
It's a good question. So, when you go through growth, there's always going to be challenges along the way. And because effectively the business started out in Sydney and we acquired, it was about 8 or 9 properties out in beautiful WA, where we had, people across the business, and you're dealing with different time zones, different systems, and, trying to get through integrations and also acquiring business all the time. And also, we're in private equity, so it is a much different kind of business from a pace point of view, and different stakeholders are looking at different things. And at the end of the day, at least from a finance perspective, we do see ourselves as a service operator, and we do have, inherently internal customers. So meeting expectations is, at the best of times, we always want to try and exceed them. Not that you try and have low expectations, but the higher expectations, the better. But it was definitely quite painful, to be quite honest. Our systems at the time, we were quite, unfortunate, depends which way you look at it. We used to use the old MYOB account right, and which was not quite appropriate. And then we had Dropbox as well. So everyone used to put on their invoices in Dropbox, and classic issues like Dropbox not syncing. You can't necessarily, tell from an audit trail what's going on, and actually just invoices not being paid, or not paid at all. So, and we don't actually like that. We actually enjoy paying our suppliers, believe it or not, because we want to have good long-term relationships. So we definitely realized from the start that we had to come up or find some solution, which inherently was postponed at some point.
Yeah, and I imagine also with all those locations and the teams on the ground, they can get quite complex really, really quickly, especially when it comes to expenses as well, like trying to navigate and manage the expenses of the teams on the ground and what they're spending when they're spending it. So where were the biggest frustrations or pain points that you saw at that time?
Well, I think it was even something as simple as knowing if the invoice was approved or not. So, people used to use the classic where they'd move an invoice from one folder to another. So again, sometimes it wouldn't, Dropbox wouldn't sync appropriately, or there'd be internet issues, or whatever that may be, or there'll be issues with the invoices. You can't actually tell what's been going on. And we're also in a special situation where, because we're an asset manager, sometimes we have an invoice that's $5. And sometimes, because we're in the property development business, we get an invoice for $1 million. So you've got that spectrum. And it was, definitely quite painful and frustrating, if I'm really honest, reflecting back on the years, in terms of just those pain points that we had. So, definitely just controlling the spend, not necessarily controlling for controlling's sake, but just to understand what was going on was quite frustrating and quite difficult.
Yeah. So, what was it visible? What was the visibility like across all the sites? Like getting approvals, and was it just the sheer volume of transactions that was like, as you were growing, the volume of transactions was increasing? And
that's right. So I mean, reflecting on what happened in the past, that we used to go through between 300 and 400 invoices when we first started the business and when we acquired those sites in WA. And to be honest, I didn't know exactly who had approved what. How much spend, how much have I committed, and all those classic kind of finance control things you look at. You don't actually know what's going on, which obviously impacts everyone across the line because you're trying to manage cash flow, obviously dealing with banks, and even from a governance point of view, just trying to understand what's going on there. And again, paying invoices late is never great. So that was always the goal, to try and actually pay invoices on time. And actually within a sustainable way.
Yeah, you're flying blind a little bit, aren't you, really? So
Exactly.
You actually shared something with me earlier, and when I say earlier, it was probably a couple of weeks ago in an email, which has stood out to me, and I'm going to raise it again today. You said to me that it helped enable scale, transparency, and control in a sustainable way. So can you unpack that a little bit for everybody? I mean, you've already done it for me because I asked you about it, but can you unpack that? Because I think that it was a really, really good quote and something that just really stuck with me.
Well, reflecting on it, it does sound like me, if you know what I mean. But in terms of sustainability, it was a bit ironic because, depending on who's listening to the call or webinar today, we're going through our sustainability reporting journey. So we're one of those lucky businesses that get to do Group 2 stage reporting, and sustainability has been on mind quite a bit. And reflecting on the past, when you're also in private equity and you have a business that's moving pretty quickly, you're growing fast, you're adding lots of new people, you're changing processes, there's all these changes that happen. It's always important to take a second and think, okay, how can we do this in a sustainable way where you don't burn people out? You can see what's going on in your business and actually enabling growth, which is quite important from our point of view. So, that it was, reflecting on that statement, it was definitely, I think, appropriate, to bring on something like ProSpend and reflecting on that, because again, we implemented it 5-6 years ago, and it's been quite amazing to see how little we've actually had to do in terms of actually the system growing with the business.
Okay, so what do you think wasn't sustainable at the time? Like what wasn't the
a classic example is, we get an email from one of the teams on the ground saying, we haven't paid invoice XYZ, and all of a sudden you got 4 people who now need to either get the invoice approved, processed, and then go through the bank run, where, we try and do that. We have fortnightly pay runs on our side, so we try and keep it quite tight in terms of who we pay, when we pay. But those kind of things can take up 15-20 minutes every time. And if you times that by 33 properties with 150 staff and over a couple thousand suppliers, it quickly adds up.
Yeah. And what about the expenses side for your teams, like giving them access to funds to be able to go and purchase things like your reimbursements or card transactions and things like that? I imagine that there would be a bit of an impact on that side of the expense as well, in being able to keep control of those expenses and making sure that people weren't buying things or spending money where they shouldn't have been or more than they shouldn't have been. So how did you sort of deal with that process as well as things grew?
Well, look, I mean, we do try and keep quite detailed budgets as much as we can, and ProSpend's been quite good in terms of getting some insight into that. But at the same time, appreciate everyone might have a different sense of financial literacy and in terms of what's expected from the team. So depending on what role you're at. So the great thing about, ProSpend, what we found, particularly what we're looking for, is that people can actually see what's been paid before. So classic example is you get an invoice from a plumber, for example, and last week he charged you $100 and this week's $150. You can easily tell, what's been charged in the past, or if you're just trying to benchmark costs, for example, across different suppliers in terms of what you see in your sphere. Yeah. Again, that really helps quite a bit.
Yeah. So did you feel that things were being a little bit reactive rather than proactive before?
100%. We weren't being pro-spend, if you know what I mean. So
pardon the pun.
Apologies for the bad jokes in advance. No, but on a more serious basis, it was definitely, we try and be as proactive as we can. We have just internally a lot of expectations from our stakeholders and security holders, and we always have to be on the front foot. I personally don't like being on the back foot. So just understanding what's going on and just trying to plan more as opposed to, trying to react within the moment. Yeah. And just trying to feel like we have some sort of sense of control made a massive difference. And again, giving the team or empowering the team is also great as well, because they feel like they're actually part of the process. They're, trying to actually see what's going on in their sphere in terms of, at least from a cost perspective. And again, just trying to encourage that behavior as well across the business.
Yeah, I suppose that the control is really important because you're getting that real-time visibility as well, aren't you, across what is actually being spent and who is actually spending what and where.
Exactly.
So what was the tipping point where you thought, we actually need to do something? Like, you've been going now since 2017. You started things off a little bit, obviously manually, and then as you grew, you've been with ProSpend for a while, a few years now. So that's ProSpend's enabled you to grow and give you that growth as well. But what was that tipping point where you needed to think, okay, we need to make some changes here?
I think there was a few. So one of the big points was, first of all, looking at a new ERP system. So we knew it wasn't sustainable using the old MYOB system, for example, and it's no disrespect to that. It just wasn't great for our needs. So we definitely want to transition to a full-scale ERP, which Kilimanjaro and MYOB Acumatica was, I think, the perfect solution for our business. And then, what systems could complement that. So, we did have a look at the market and obviously spoke to Kilimanjaro as well, and what solutions were available, and ProSpend was pretty much the first thing that came to mind. So after we integrated MYOB Acumatica, which was done on time and in budget by Kilimanjaro as well, we looked at the next bolt-on system, which was ProSpend, or Expense Manager, I think it used to be called at the time. So that was the big tipping point. Is it's now time for change, and let's do this and get it done.
So, and that's then the good opportunity, isn't it, to really readdress everything within the organisation, from the finance team all the way down, though, really, I think, as well. And look, you made a point just then about Kilimanjaro and ProSpend, and I think Masha also mentioned it in her opening. The partnership between us has been long-standing, and I think that is really important as well, because Kilimanjaro help understand your business. They can come back to us and let us know what you need, and we work through what I refer to as the trilogy of trust. Obviously, we all want what's right for the client, so the partnership is really important. So it was really good to hear you say that. That was great. This next question, I think, is an important one, and I think a lot of businesses will they'll, what's the word I'm looking for, they'll understand what I'm trying to say. It'll resonate with them. How did all the teams, not just the finance team, feel about these changes? Because it's a big change management piece, moving from one ERP system to another, but then implementing other processes, along with ProSpend. So things are going to change on how people are claiming back their reimbursements, how they're spending their money. So how did the teams all feel about that?
Well, it's very much a cultural change as well, and trying to be transparent with everyone that there is change coming. I think everyone's had different experiences when it comes to change, positive or negatively. and trying to bring that, like similar to what you said, in terms of a positive light, that the change you're bringing is not because, as the finance team, we want to know what you're spending per se. It's also to help you as well in terms of managing your own day-to-day spend, and also holding us to account as well in terms of, expectations and timelines. So a big thing was definitely cultural, and sort of like this, the change is positive and it's good, and it will help everyone at the end of the day. So just getting that buy-in, and not just for the regional managers, for example, but, for staff on the coalface, where they're actually going through the perils every day of something as simple as trying to get a leak fixed, and making sure that that local plumber has still a good relationship with them, because the plumber gets paid at the end of the day, so they want to come back, especially if it's 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So yes, there's definitely a cultural impact as well.
I think it empowers people as well. I think if they can see that it is to their benefit, and it's empowering them, and it's holding everybody in the organisation accountable for the spend, I think is a big thing as well. It's what the conversations that I've had with other businesses that I've spoken to, where they say change management is a big piece, but it is all about empowering their teams, showing that they're being empowered to be able to do their job without one hand being tied behind their back. They've got the tools to be able to do that. Okay, so fast forward to now. So how do things look now day to day across all the resorts?
Well, I think it's quite amazing reflecting on the journey and where we are now. So a big thing for us is in terms of month end. So we complete month end in 1 day now, and post-spend has a lot to do with that, to be honest.
You didn't share that with me before, so you've left this as a little bit of a secret. So 1 day for month end.
Yeah, so we used to do, I think when I first started, it was about 13, 14 days, and now we've got it down, I think we had it down to 10 or 9, and then now we've got it down to 1. And a big thing, like we talked about, was visibility into what's going on. So we have a much more complete picture in terms of what's actually going on with the business. And, something as simple as passing your accruals for the unpaid expenditure, it's quite easy to see, what's been approved, what's pending, and, it does obviously impact, your P&L and your balance sheet, but just having that confidence that we can say, wholeheartedly what's actually going on out in the business, we actually, can have a look and see what's going on. So again, that's quite, it's quite a great achievement. I'm not just saying that to make myself look good, but at the end of the day, it's a team effort. But again, it's bringing all the systems and people together along the journey. And again, even from a simple as an expenditure perspective, making sure that there's, proper controls in place, who gets to spend what. We've got a full implemented delegation of authority, which is part of the pro-spend package, where you can implement in terms of, if a certain staff member can only spend $500, if it's more than that, then it cascades up from there in terms of the chain. Again, it just gives that, comfort knowing that expenses are being incurred appropriately, and also, within the right control framework as well.
Mm. So would you say that now that you've got a really good balance, like being able to scale, because obviously you're continuing to grow as well, so you're being able to scale, but still maintain that control and transparency without adding any more admin or stressful challenges to the other teams in the other areas?
I agree. So, the big thing is the transparency. So, everyone can see exactly what's on their plate, what's been spent, what hasn't been spent, and just being able to see that makes a huge difference, not just, again, to finance, but the person on the ground who's actually trying to get an invoice paid, makes a huge deal. So, yeah, it's definitely helped in that way.
Okay, so for anyone listening who might be in a similar position, and I'm going to assume there are a few people out there. I know the registration numbers for this webinar were very high. It exceeded my expectations, I have to be honest and say. So thank you to everybody who's joined. So for all those that are listening who could potentially be in a similar situation as far as growing, they've got multi-sites, or they're challenged by spending habits and controls, or at least they feel that there's a bit of pressure there. What advice would you give them? Is there anything that you wish you'd done earlier or thought about after you started the journey that potentially might help them?
Yeah, so look, I think, the as the old proverb says, the best time to plant a tree was yesterday, and the second best time is today. And I appreciate everyone has different expectations from the business and different pressures, but I can't, stress enough. I kind of wish we did implement ProSpend earlier. But again, it's just about getting that buy-in from the business and trying to be proactive as well, because it pays off. It doesn't, you can see some benefits now, but the long-term benefits pays off dramatically over time.
Yeah. And look, I think, one of the reasons that I love ProSpend, and obviously they pay my salary, that's one reason. But the other thing is having had my own business for 10 years in New Zealand, which Masha knows because she's in New Zealand, but I had my own business for 10 years in New Zealand. And I think watching businesses grow and then trying to implement everything at once, and that's where the change management piece tends to go out the window because there's just so much going on. The ability to be able to do things in controlled stages, I think, is really important as well. And that's one of the things that ProSpend actually does enable businesses to do. So you can start off with the expense management piece, which is all your reimbursements, your card purchases, etc., and then grow into AP, grow into travel, if that's what you need to do as well. And I think once you've implemented one thing and you can see what the value that it brings, then that value and the money savings or the time savings then pays for the next section and the next section or features or functionality that you want to be implementing. So it's a no mean feat. So yeah. Any last remarks, Kevin, that you have before we finish up?
Oh, look, I said, I think the sooner you can get onto it, the better, to be honest. I know sometimes everyone's going through their own journey. And, the sooner you start, the better. I'm not just saying that, because we're a happy customer, but at the same time, we do feel like there is that triangle of trust as well, circling back earlier. So, yeah. Definitely, from our perspective, don't delay and try and get through.
Awesome. Kevin, thank you again. This genuinely it's been such a great conversation, and I'm sure that people in the audience will have taken away little chunks of gold here or there, even if it's just the confidence in knowing that they're dealing with the right people, dealing with Kilimanjaro, or even if they are using ProSpend already, knowing that they're dealing with an organisation that stands for what they stand for. I think what really stands out is that it's not just about managing spend, it's also about enabling growth in a way that still feels controlled and, to your point, sustainable. So for anyone on the call, if anything has resonated with you, please feel free to reach out to the team at Kilimanjaro, and they'll be able to help you there. It's important to note that both Kilimanjaro and ProSpend we're both committed. We have been for a number of years now to ensure that the outcome is right for you as the actual client. And I think, for one of the last points that I want to make before I actually go in and do a little bit of a demonstration. So I'm just going to show, I've got a couple of little videos that I'm going to talk to on what ProSpend actually looks like for those that haven't seen it before. But one of the points that I wanted to make, and this is a conversation that's come up probably over the last 4 to 6 weeks, even more so now since the budget has come out, and that is that, whilst the cost of living pressures are on individuals, and we hear about that all the time, it's also on businesses, probably more so now than it has been in a long, long time. So if there is a product or something that you can implement into the system that's going to help you with that, it's got to be a benefit to the business, right? I might just, before we wrap up with Kevin, I might just throw up a poll. So how many of our audience are currently managing how are you currently managing your employee spend yourselves? Are you doing it manually through spreadsheets? So people are manually filling out spreadsheets and sending that through to the finance team for them to be reimbursed? Is it a mix of manual and you've got some tools in place? Or is it mostly manual? Or you're not sure, it varies across the business. If you wouldn't mind just maybe taking a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes just to answer that poll, that would be absolutely fantastic. Would really appreciate that. And what we'll do is we'll share those as the results come in. We can share those results with the team. So Kevin, I suppose I'm going to go through and do this little bit of a demonstration, and by that stage, hopefully we'll have the results back. Well, we will have the results back in from the poll. I can see people frantically there putting in their answers, which is fantastic. Oh, they've all come back. This is interesting. So there's the highest, we've got 41% of people who have a mix of both manual and they're using some tools. 32% of you are still doing it manually and through spreadsheets and emails. That's really interesting. 5% across the business that aren't sure. And we've got 22% that are mostly automated. So that's great. So there's still some of you there that are doing things a little bit more manual. That was an interesting poll. Thank you very much, everybody, for taking part in the poll. What I might do now is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to take you all just on a little bit of a tour, as I mentioned earlier on, just to give you a taste of what ProSpend does. I would encourage you, if there's something there and you want to know more or learn more about what ProSpend does and how it integrates into Acumatica, please get onto your account manager or the team at Kilimanjaro. They will definitely be able to work with us and arrange a demonstration. It'll be a tailored demonstration to your business. So using, the system will be set up to enable us to be able to demonstrate to you how it would work in your organisation. But before, so to do that, sorry, apologies. So to do that, please, jump on board and get hold of the team at Kilimanjaro. But let me share my screen now and just take you through a little bit of a tour of what ProSpend actually does. So what you're seeing on the screen at the moment is a simulation of the app that appears on the phone. Now, the app works on both Android or an iPhone, so you can download them from the App Store. They'll work on the phone. Once a person logs in, they'll see what you can see on the screen at the moment. The app looks exactly what you're seeing here. So if they were going to put in a receipt that they needed to have repaid back, whether that be an out-of-pocket expense or otherwise known as a reimbursement, they would just come into the app, log into ProSpend, they'd click on the plus button, and this will then open up and enable them to say that they want to add a new receipt. So they just click on new receipt. Once they do that, it then opens up the camera. So from the camera, you have a couple of options here. You can either take a photo of the receipt then and there. You could pick up a photo from your photo gallery that you had taken a couple of days prior or a month prior, whatever. So you can pick up a photo from your gallery, or you could pick up a receipt from a file within your phone, which is actually something that I do personally myself. So all my Uber receipts, I actually download them into files on my phone, and then I come into the app, choose the camera, open the file, and then I bring in the file. There is a fourth way that you can get receipts, which I'm going to share with you in the next video, and that is by way of an email. So once you've taken a photo of the receipt or you've captured the one that you want, the system will then, using our OCR technology, and we're embedding obviously AI into that as well, and we also look at history of transactions or receipts that have come in. It will come in and it will automatically specify the expense based on the receipt that it's read in. So it will code the expense. Now, with the expense types, this can be the expense type itself, the description can be a description that is unique to your industry with the GL codes from your chart of accounts, from your chart in MYOB, linked to that description. Okay, so that makes it more relevant for people to understand when they're putting in their receipts and needing to code them. Or you could use the descriptions from your P&L as well. And you set these get set up. So all this process is done during the onboarding. So during the onboarding stages, we take you through, ask you some questions so that we can make sure we can set this up best way for your business moving forward. You will notice also that we have some tips or policies here. And again, they are all set up based around your industry. So these are little tips, policies that are there to remind the teams when they're putting in receipts what they need to be coding things for. So once we've taken the photo, that's all that the team member needs to do, right, is enter in an expense type if one hasn't come across already, because we picked it up previously, as I mentioned. So what the system then does, it will automatically read in using the technology. It'll look at the receipt and it will read in the invoice amount, it reads in the GST value, the invoice date, and also the supplier. So all that information comes across automatically for you. All I need to do now is I'm going to say I'm going to add that to a claim, and I already have an existing reimbursement claim in my ProSpend app that I'm going to pass on to my manager for him or her to approve. So I'm going to add this to an existing claim. So you can see here I've got a claim for a taxi, got a claim for entertainment, and now it's just added in that staff amenities claim. So from here, all I need to do now is hit more, and I can submit that receipt. So there are three different types of expenses that we can capture through the receipt process here. The first one is a reimbursement claim, which I just mentioned. So here I can just hit submit, and that will now go through. As soon as I hit submit here, that will trigger an email to my approver that there is an expense claim that needs to be looked at and approved. We also have the ability to be able to use corporate cards. So your business's corporate card, if you already have a corporate card, a NAB card, Westpac, CommBank, Macquarie Bank, corporate card that you're using within the organisation, an Amex card as well, you can use the app to take photos of the receipt. It will scan the receipt in and hold the receipt there for you. And then overnight, we get a feed from the bank. It then comes into ProSpend and it will automatically match up that receipt to the actual bank feed before it then goes on to an approver, to the finance team, and all that goes through into Acumatica. The other way is via a virtual card. So we have a number of businesses, and virtual cards are becoming more and more popular. ProSpend can issue a virtual card which resides in your digital wallet on your phone. It's used exactly the same as any other card that you have in your digital wallet. So you can tap and pay using that card, take a photo of the receipt. That feed again comes into ProSpend. It will match the receipt up to the feed, goes through to the approval process, through to the approver, going through that process, and then into the finance team and onto Acumatica. So I have a ProSpend card. It gets topped up every month. So when I'm traveling or I'm entertaining, if I get the opportunity to do that, which doesn't happen that often, I can use that card to do that. So I just tap with the card, take a photo of the receipt, and they get married up. And like I said, it just goes through to my approver and onto into Acumatica. So 3 ways of being able to control your expenses through the app. One of the other features that we have is the ability to be able to track mileage. So if I click on the mileage button here, you can see I can actually enter in a start destination, and I can also enter in my final destination. What the system will do then, it uses Google Maps to actually calculate the number of kilometres, so the distance that you've travelled. It actually also shows you the rate that you're being paid per kilometre, and then it will give you the total amount, and then you can save that. What you can also do is you can add destinations. So if you've got somebody that's going to be visiting multiple sites, and that might be some of your team where they're visiting different sites, they can actually put in multiple sites, and it will then go in and calculate the kilometres and also then do the calculation for them as well. So again, once I've done that, if we are using projects, so ProSpend enables you, depending on the type of industry that you're in, you can set up projects, locations, cost centres, jobs, as well. So you have the ability to be able to allocate that travel to a particular project, as you do any of your other expense claims that you're putting through as well. So you nominate the actual project, and then we hit save. So now that's gone through to my approver. The approver, as I mentioned, gets an email notification letting them know that there is a transaction there that they need to look at and approve. And then that will flow through onto the finance team and go through into Acumatica. That approval process, there's lots of variations in the approval process. You can have multi-level approvers, you can have approvals based on certain dollar values of purchases as well. So a lot of variation available there for the approval process. All that is discussed in the onboarding, during our onboarding and discovery, and then obviously set up before we get started. The next video that I have here is actually taking you into the desktop to give you a look at what the desktop looks like. So this is Kylie Magenta. So this is her desktop. And what I'd like to bring to your attention first, you can see down here, we have a card statement for Kylie. So we have the reimbursement as well. So she's done a reimbursement. So she didn't use her card to purchase something and she needs to be reimbursed for that. And a really good example of that is a client that I was talking to, where they provide 70% of their employees' phone bills. They'll pay 70% of the phone bill. So that phone bill doesn't get paid on any card, a corporate card, or it doesn't get paid on a ProSpend card. They pay for it themselves, they put through a reimbursement, and then that reimbursement is paid for that 70%. So Kylie has put in her reimbursement, but she also has a Amex card that she uses on behalf of the business, so a corporate card that she uses on behalf of the business. Before we actually go into the card, let's just have a bit of a dive into the actual receipts and how we maintain the receipts. So I mentioned that we have the mobile app where you can obviously take your photos, capture all your expenses via those photos on the mobile app. But we also have the ability to be able to email receipts into a unique email address set up per user. Now, this also works in the AP side as well, where we have the accounts payable automation. You can have your suppliers emailing a unique email address as well. So here we have the ability to email receipts. But you have the ability to be able to save your receipts on your desktop, which I know some individuals do. Hello, I'd be one of those. So I have a month for every single receipt. They get uploaded onto my desktop, regardless of even if I've captured them. And it's more a personal thing for me. But people can do that. You can have them on your desktop, and then you can choose to upload them from the desktop. And they will then all come into ProSpend. So with your card statements, they automatically arrive into ProSpend. So if we open up this transaction, this card transaction, you'll see here that these are the transactions of the statement. Now, this statement will grow over time. So as a transaction comes in, this statement is going to increase as well because all the transactions are going to appear. So you can see here that I have a Jetstar invoice. So that invoice we uploaded. It then automatically matched. So I collected it earlier. It automatically got matched with the feed overnight that came in overnight, and it's attached itself to the expense here. So automatically that happens. We don't have to worry about doing any of that. So I can come in and I can change any of the coding. So I can come in and check the coding to make sure that it was right. So you can see here it's gone to domestic travel. I can see the tips or the policies here as well, giving me a little reminder of how much I can or can't spend, for example. And depending on the expense type, these fields down here will change. So in some instances, you don't need to know the trip of the purpose, you might not need to know the passengers, etc. So these are the fields that we've set up for domestic travel. If it's a domestic airfare, we need to complete those fields. We're going to have a look at another transaction here. So a taxi. So we've got a taxi here. What I want to highlight here is the ability to be able to split an expense. So you can split expenses over multiple expense codes, but you can do it either by an amount. So I can split an expense by an amount. I can split an expense by a percentage. So you can allocate percentages. And you can also get very, very granular and split an expense over multiple expense types. So actually breaking it down, not just by project, but even codes within a project. So you can really get down to the nitty gritty, and we were talking about before, of really having full control and knowing exactly where that spend is going. It's really useful also because you might have a mixed GST scenario where you've got GST on some lines and not on others. So you have the ability also to be able to split that GST up as well. Now, down here, we have got a transaction which is in red, and that's because it's telling me there is some things missing. So anything that is green is all ready to go. All I need to do is run my eye over it and check it to make sure that I'm happy with it. But anything that is in red, it needs completing. So here I can easily come in and enter in my expense code. I can enter in a project if I need to put in the project code and the description. So these fields can be made mandatory as well. So when we're setting it up in the back end, doing that onboarding process, we can determine which fields you need to be mandatory for the teams to complete. So once we've done that, I also want to highlight the FBT. So we have the ability, you can see here we've selected entertainment and we've got the little policy tip here. Please complete the guest box. The amount will be split automatically for GST purposes. Now, most of you will have gone through the FBT reconciliation, the end of year for FBT. One of the things that ProSpend does, it enables you to create that FBT transaction straight away. So capturing that information as it happens. So you can come in here and you can choose whether it is a client, whether it's an employee, non-traveling, etc. You can add the details in. So you can see here, I've got Kylie Magenta's already here. So we've got a couple in here already. We've got Joe, who was the client. We've got Kylie, she was the employee. She was there as well. So at the end of the financial year, at the FBT year, it will actually produce you, ProSpend will produce you a report giving you the 50-50 and the actual values for you to be able to then make the decision as to which one's best for the business. So another really good piece of functionality within the system. And the reason I'm highlighting this today is because a lot of businesses that use ProSpend aren't even aware that it's there. Okay, so moving along, I'm just conscious of time. Just very quickly, you have the ability also then to specify your approver. So we can see here Kylie's approver is John Reed. So as soon as she hits approve, we're going to go to the actions because we want to submit it. John will get an email notification to let him know that he has got an expense claim that he needs to approve before it goes to the finance team and for them to put it into Acumatica, send it through to Acumatica. That brings me to the end of my little demonstration as well. So the purpose of today wasn't obviously to go into a high detailed demonstration of the product, because all of you will use different variations of ProSpend. So if there was anything there that you felt you would get benefit from, I encourage you, like I said, just get hold of the Kilimanjaro team, anyone in the team, and they'll organise with us to take you through on a obligation-free, no big sales pitches, just to give you an introduction on how ProSpend can help your business from an expense management perspective, or travel, if you're dealing with a travel provider like Corporate Traveller or Gulliver's, locale travel, and also from AP automation, those accounts payable invoices coming into ProSpend, matching up with purchase orders, and then going through to Acumatica.
And we do have a question for Kevin exactly on that topic. We might just go through that before you take us through the results of the poll. Kevin, the question's for you, and it is, could you please tell us more about how you got to the one-day month-end close?
There was put it this way, there was obviously a bit of blood, sweat, and tears involved. But on a genuine basis, it was definitely one part was cultural. So trying to get everyone to think about how can they do things more efficiently and effectively as well, because it's one thing doing it quickly, but if you're getting it wrong, it doesn't really add much value. And that, to be honest, that took a couple of years to get to the 1 day close. And that was pretty much every single month reviewing all our processes and all our controls and looking at, what's the best way of trying to get there. But again, it was definitely, part of it was culture. So again, encouraging everyone to do things in the best way possible, and also looking at our systems and how can we leverage from that as well. And being transparent, we do use MYOB ERP with the other bolt-on for Lexo. So that also helped enable things and pro-spend as well, just in terms of what's actually going on from an AP point of view. So we can actually close certain things off before month end as well. But yeah, it is a journey, but it's something that, you always need to work on because, as I said, you can get it done quickly, but you also need to get it done correctly as well. So I wish there was a magic bullet in terms of what that is, but if one piece of advice is just try every single month to see what you can do and just try to instill that culture across the team.
Perfect.
Beautiful.
Our next question is from Alison Mass. We've got the results of the poll. Should we go through this?
Yes. Let's look at this. Will be interesting. So, wow, there's 20% of people get their end of month done in 1 to 2 days. That's fantastic. 32% 3 to 5 days. There's 39% of you that it takes 5 days plus. Okay, so that's interesting. These polls and sharing the results of the polls, I think, are really important because it makes people realize that they're not on their own. They're not by themselves. They're not the only ones that are struggling with this. And I think that's part of the thing with business, right? Is that, am I the only one that's suffering from this? And if I'm not, how can I get around it? Who can help me with this? So, this is the really good poll. Thank you all very, very much for taking part and sharing those results and sharing that with us. Great results.
Great. Next question is from Alison. What if someone uses a card that is not theirs, that is office supplies purchased on a company card, so the card owner is not the one making the purchase? How can they upload the receipt to match that card?
Okay, I would have to ask the question here, are we talking about a physical corporate card like a bank from the bank, or are we talking about a virtual card that ProSpend has issued? I'll answer both. If it's a virtual card, the virtual card is sitting on my phone, so nobody can use my card unless I personally give them the card number, expiry date, and CCV number. So the virtual card lives on my phone. So from a security perspective, that's it. And that probably raises a really good point to say that you can actually use a virtual card to purchase things online. That's how I get my airline tickets. That's how I book my hotels as well. Obviously, if it's a card, an actual physical card, there's no way. I mean, where I worked, one of my previous lives, we all had photocopies of the boss's Amex card. And, if I go back to my old diaries, I reckon I'd still find it. So, because he wanted everything on his Amex card, so we all had copies of it. The biggest frustration there was beautiful Alison, which isn't this Alison, but Alison McGawley, who used to run our accounts department, who then would have to chase people for months to find out who purchased something on Mike's Amex card, which was the most frustrating thing for her. So I think that's where, allocating people virtual cards takes away all that. And I know some businesses go down to the post office and they buy $200 cards from the post office and then allocate them out to volunteers or people that need to spend, but they've got no control over those cards. Whereas a ProSpend virtual card, you've got full control over how much you put on the card, when you put it on, and obviously who's spending it because you've allocated the card to them. So I hope that sort of answers the question, Alison. If not, please, come back and jump in another question.
Great. Our next one is the expense claim process compliant with FBT rules in Australia? Example, enables simple FBT reporting in relation to entertainment and the like, whether overnight for a client, alcohol, etc., all built in to the expense claim system.
It does cater to that, but obviously when the expenses are coming in and we have the entertainment policy, it'll be up to the employee to make sure that they're coding all that correctly. But I think that's also why it then goes through to the approver to double check to make sure that everything's right, and the finance team before it hits finance. But yes, it does take it does take into account the Australian rules around FBT.
Right. Is it possible to send to finance team review first before sending to the approver to approve?
You could do that. That would come back to the way that you set up your approval processes. So it might go to somebody in the finance team to approve first, and then it goes to the actual boss, or the manager of that department for them to approve before it goes through. So yes, that is possible. The other thing that I didn't mention is that you can actually reject an expense claim as well. So it might be that on that statement for Amex, it might be that there's one item on there that you don't agree with, so that the whole expense claim would be rejected, and you can put notes in as to why it's been rejected. Then the team member would have to go in and complete it based on the notes and then go through that approval process again. So that was just a little extra.
Next question is from Tammy. Is there a process that connects to the company tree or work groups in MYOB for approval and account limits?
Okay, I have to say I don't know the answer to that question. I'm really sorry, Tammy. What we will do is, if you can mark that one, Masha, please.
Yep.
And we will get the answer. And maybe if it's possible, you and I can talk about this later, but in the email that goes out, the thank you email that goes out to everybody, maybe we could have the answers to these questions in that email as well.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Thank you.
Great. In the interest of time, I think that's a wrap for the questions for today. If there are any further questions, you want to opt in for a demo, you want us to arrange introductions, please reach out to your Kilimanjaro account manager, and we will help arrange these for you. And we look forward to continuing these conversations. Thank you very much, Maz and Kevin, for your time today, and have a good rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy your day. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Masha.
Bye.